Hey guys, thanks for stopping by for another video here at All I See Is W, where we talk about stocks, Bitcoin, and finance, where the goal of this channel is to gain on positive proceeds and lead with an altruistic mindset. In today's video, I'd like to cover overall updates with the Bitcoin commodity. We'll cover technical fundamental analysis, including overall price predictions with MicroStrategy, MSTR, as well as sharing updates with what we're seeing in the Bitcoin mining sector. We'll cover updates with latest news, and I will be providing my price predictions across these different sectors here. Now, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate you hitting the like, subscribing so that I can continue to add value to this YouTube channel. So, current state, what we know is that with Trump now in the White House, we had the executive order signed for cryptocurrency, and we're beginning to see a lot of catalysts coming in, especially with the crypto task force for the United States, as well as having different changes to the regulation, especially with the SAB. Now, the accounting rules is that for companies, liabilities do not have to be reported when you have Bitcoin on your balance sheet. On top of that, eliminating the central banks for crypto, that really takes away that level of difficulty as well. And with the change with the SAB, now even companies, banks, are able to custody Bitcoin. So that really starts attracting financial institutions, banks to have services provided to clients so that they can provide custody service. So that really changes the dynamics of Bitcoin. And even in fact, today, Czech National Bank considers investing into Bitcoin about $7 billion, which is marking potential shift in central reserve for Bitcoin, and this will be a pioneer for Bitcoin investments. Really just drives up foreign investments, diversification, and economic hedging into Bitcoin commodity. And what does that mean? That's really going to drive up the price of Bitcoin as the demand continues to increase. But all of this is solid news along with just information about strategic Bitcoin reserve. We're beginning to hear that more and more across the different states of the United States. But where we are from a technical standpoint today, we saw great price action. Bitcoin now hovering at 104,000. I think that we may very well see price of Bitcoin reach all-time highs currently at 109,000 with the all-time high. I think we're going to start seeing that next gap up in Q1 of 2025. Along with just looking at the overall rainbow chart of Bitcoin, here we know that having took place April 2024, one big thing is that we haven't really broke out yet with the Bitcoin bull cycle here. We're still in that early phase, which is why I believe in 2025 we're going to see some really big price movements with the price of Bitcoin, especially now that we have government involvement, we have financial institutions, we have countries trying to buy up more Bitcoin. Supply and demand will just kick in, especially with the amount of Bitcoin that's available, about a million Bitcoins remaining out of a total of 21 million. So putting that into context, along with recent post-halving event, we're going to see that all-time rally for Bitcoin this year here. Let's take a look at just, recent news here from Yahoo in that Bitcoin price soars past 105,000 as Fed says US banks can serve crypto clients. So this has really driven up the price of Bitcoin recently, where we're beginning to see more inflows here. And that has to do with Federal Chair Jerome Powell indicating that banks can actually start serving crypto clients now that banks can actually be the ones custodying Bitcoin. So that has led to Bitcoin rallying, and banks are perfectly able to serve crypto customers as long as they can understand and service the risk according to Powell, which was announced yesterday. And that's what drove up the price of Bitcoin. But what we're beginning to see is that there's been increased sentiment, not only in Bitcoin, but we're seeing ETFs being created across Ethereum and other platforms. We take a look here on X in that, Bitcoin reached 106,000. We have Michael Saylor now on the Forbes magazine. We've heard about Illinois State Representative introducing bill to buy Bitcoin, as well as Indiana as well. I'm beginning to lose track of all of the different states that are trying to implement Bitcoin to adopt that as their strategic reserve. Norway Central Bank funds own MicroStrategy as well. So you see here global support, global interest, involvement in Bitcoin, as well as even the Titan MicroStrategy. Let's take a look at this article here. The SEC actually just approved Bitwise spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. So what we're seeing is that there is a reputation being built across the entire crypto ecosystem. And this is one milestone achievement that we're seeing, especially with the SEC approving this launch of ETFs. That shows more diversification, not only in Bitcoin, but also in Bitcoin Ether exchange traded fund. That really is just going to draw more attention. And I think with this approval from the SEC, that's really just going to start, having more interest from investors to start investing more into the cryptocurrency market, especially with this being launched in the New York Stock Exchange, now bringing in investors in the traditional stock market into the cryptocurrency market. Let's take a look at BlackRock here. We know that BlackRock created IBIT, one of the biggest ETFs for Bitcoin. They continue to buy up more Bitcoin. In fact, they own more than the government now, surpassing the government's ownership of Bitcoin of 471,000 government-owned Bitcoin. That's all retrieved from, just with the undermarket. But I think with this move here with BlackRock, as they continue to buy up more Bitcoin, so will MicroStrategy. And for those reasons, demand for Bitcoin will continue to increase. As we look at this article here, we see Michael Saylor, you know, as a CEO of MicroStrategy. Here, he's labeled as the Bitcoin alchemist. Why Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy is a brilliant blueprint for manipulating traditional finance to harness the pixie dust of cryptomania. So business model that Michael Saylor has created. It's a win-win situation. A lot of people thought that he was a major failure, but he continued to remain resilient. He focused on the business model. Think of the analogy of a vacuum, a black hole sucking up all of that fiat money from investors, using that money to buy up raw Bitcoin, converting that to wrap Bitcoin through different levers to satisfy the needs of other customers with different risk appetites. So he has different ways for you to invest into Bitcoin, especially if you're not able to own actual Bitcoin. So this really attracts many investors, which is why MicroStrategy, one of the leading companies right now with the most amount of Bitcoins, close to about 500,000 Bitcoins on their treasury. They're winning, they're dominating. And as the saying goes, there's no second best. And that's led by this CEO here, which is why now he's on the Forbes magazine. Let's take a look at this article here, from bar charts. So just more around MicroStrategy. We've seen price, really catapult in the year 2024. In fact, back in November 2024, it reached all-time high of like 800% gains. But we have been seeing some healthy pullback here. But I think key takeaway is with the Q3 performance, what we saw was difficulty with revenue and profits, and there was increase in companies' operating expense. But I think as we head into next week, earnings report for Q4 is going to be announced. What I think is going to be different is that in Q3, we saw huge pressure on its profitability. The fact that Bitcoin's price has gone up in Q4, when you see the growth from Q3 to Q4 per every Bitcoin that MicroStrategy owns, $30,000 different per every Bitcoin owned. that's really going to drive up the profitability Q4 results of MicroStrategy. And for those reasons, I do think that MSTR is going to blow things out of the water. They're going to show on their balance sheet net income, earnings per share is going to show much better results, actual results compared to expected results. And that's really going to drive up the price here. Along with other big time tech companies that will be announcing earnings report here. One of the key takeaways here from these analysts is that analysts are, affirming a price target of $650, which is an upside of about 90%. But that I think is more on the conservative realm. I do think that 2025, we may, in a, best case scenario, very well see a price of Bitcoin actually exceed the $1,000 range. I'm forecasting 1,200 is something that we could definitely see as well. On top of that, Michael Saylor, he has partnerships with the Trump administration. He works very closely with Eric Trump. So that partnership is really just going to add value to MSTR's branding that's already created, but it'll only get more and more popular. Let's take a look at this visual here. So now, I think this may even be outdated where we may likely see more Bs, which means you are a pro Bitcoin state. I think eventually, states will have to adapt to this because if not, that means you're going to be left behind and that state will be depleted in terms of its treasury reserve when it comes to just money. So I think the companies that adopt strategic Bitcoin reserve will be the states that will actually win in this environment and really help the United States grow and thrive from an economic point of view. Let's take a look at technicals of MSTR. So we know that back in November, it reached 550. Since then to now, it's at that 340 range. It had a support range of 280 at that pullback, but now we're beginning to see some consolidation. I see a cup and handle forming. From a technical standpoint, one thing to keep in mind is we are still below the Ichimoku cloud current price action. We got to be worried about this gravitational pull down based on the clouds here. It could pull the price down even further, but just based on market sentiment, earnings report coming out, I do think that February we could very well see price of MSTR go up to the $500 range before we start reaching its prior resistance of 550 and start gapping up in the year 2025. Let's take a look at just, updates with Bitcoin here in that, Bitcoin holdings per public miners, Mara, Riot, CleanSpark. I think that we're seeing, a big disparity, especially with Mara with the most amount of Bitcoins from the mining sector. Riot's number two with HODL, CleanSpark number three, neck to neck with like Hut 8. But I think the key takeaway is that, you know, what we're seeing is that, these companies, they have a high capacity for Bitcoin mining, as well as having a high HODL here. I mean, number one, number two, Riot, number three, CleanSpark. They have a lot of Bitcoins. I believe earnings report, they're going to blow things out of the water as well. The last 2 quarters, we saw the shorters take advantage of underperforming earnings report. But I think that just with Q4 showing that price of Bitcoin going up, these companies are really going to show positive earnings per share, net income, demonstrating that the miners are a business where they are able to gain on positive return on cash flow. And just today, there was the announcement with a recently launched ETF. Grayscale launches, Bitcoin miners ETF, MNRS. So this is really going to add some exposure to investors as well who don't like investing in single stocks, but diversifying across different Bitcoin miners. This is really going to add more value to the miners like Mara, CleanSpark, Riot, because this ETF owns those type of companies there. So I think that having ETFs created for the Bitcoin miners, supporting that mining ecosystem, I think that's really going to drive up the price of different Bitcoin miners as well. So as we look at the technicals here, we're looking at various Bitcoin miners. We have Mara in the candlestick. We have CleanSpark in pink here. We have Riot here. We have Cipher. I mean, Cipher just got a deal with SoftBank. SoftBank, is supporting the Stargate $500 billion AI project. So you see the fact that SoftBank is now investing into Cipher. What do you think about all of the different miners, especially the miners that are in Texas? So you have like RIOT, you have IREN facility in Texas with huge megawatt capacity. We may very well hear partnerships with the Stargate project, at least for the companies that are in Texas right now. So you have RIOT, IREN positioning into AI, HPC, along with CORZ AI, HPC. I think a lot of this is really going to be very valuable for the share price from a fundamentals perspective. But just from a technicals analysis, the fact that these miners have underperformed in the year 2024, we could very well see upside in 2025 just based on technicals, but fundamentals. Price of Bitcoin to reach all-time highs, 200,000 MSTR to continue going up. What does that mean for the miners? Because miners performed really bad last year. I think that we're going to see a inverse pattern, positive performance in the year 2025, especially with Trump 2.0. We have a Bitcoin supporting president. I think price of these miners, we could very well see 3 to 5x. Now, of course, not all of these miners may perform, but I think majority of these miners will perform. And the big time hodlers like CleanSpark, Riot, Mara, I think that these big three miners can very well perform as well as Cipher, Iron, and Cores, along with Bitfarms, for example. So there you have it. I do think that current price action today, we saw some nice positive gains with the miners, but I think February with earnings report as well as production data being announced, we can very well see some huge upside with the Bitcoin miners with 3 to 5x potential in the year 2025. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't already done so, I would really appreciate you hitting the like to this YouTube video, as well as subscribing to All I See Is W so I can continue to provide more updates. Thank you for stopping by. I'd love to hear what your comments, questions are down below. Thank you.